Hey guys, welcome back. My name's Azriel,
I'm Anthony.
and we're Accursed Brew.
Today, we're going to be bringing you our first impressions of Stalker 2: Heart of Chornobly.
So, in a similar fashion to our Veilguard first impression video, we'll be breaking this up into a handful of different categories, starting off with technical aspects.
Yeah, so performance bugs, AI issues, it's not great. Performance is really, really rough at launch. So I'm running a 2080 Super with a 12th Gen i5.
And I'm running a 4070 with a Ryzen 7 5800X.
So I mean, decent computers, not like super modern, top of the line stuff, but we usually don't have problems running other stuff pretty high graphic settings. This one I had a lot of issues with. Not so much outside when I'm like running around in the open world, but as soon as there's multiple NPCs like in a town or something, I had massive frame drops, quite a few like graphical hiccups here and there where, the game would slow down, I'd drop a few frames, and then it'd pick back up, 16 frames past where it should be. It's pretty rough. There's some lighting issues. I know Azzy had quite a few big lighting bugs. I didn't have too much of that. Mine was more so just frame stuff.
Yeah, I would echo like everything that you just said is exactly the same experience that I had. I had a quite a crazy lighting bug that just sort of changed the way the outside of the town looked. I think this was at night, and I don't know. It's very odd to just look at and try to understand. Eventually when you walk into it, it gets really dark. Yeah, just really strange. There were floating bodies and things like that too. Like he was saying, just general graphical hiccups, lighting issues, artifacting, things like that. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It really takes you out of the moment, really breaks that immersion that the game, that Stalker in general really is known for. It really takes you out of that. Something else that could definitely do with quite a bit of work are a lot of the AI issues. They're not really. So first off, just to preface, and a Life 2.0 isn't present in the game. It's something that they said wasn't ready for launch. It's buggy and things like that, but they are actively working on getting that fixed. But again, it isn't something that's present in the game, and it is a noticeable feature that's missing. You're just not seeing that same sort of life in the NPCs that are in the towns, that are on the streets, that are wandering around. You can feel their absence.
Yeah, it feels like the like all the NPCs are waiting for you to arrive, not like in a living, breathing world, going about their lives without you. Now they did mention on the Discord this isn't how it should be working, and they're looking into it. But at launch, this is what we're looking at.
Yeah, and it's very disappointing because it's a huge feature of Stalker. I remember playing Clear Sky, and a lot of the missions are just being completed on my behalf. I remember hitting up Anthony when that happened, just being really surprised. Like I had no idea that was something to expect from it, but it was happening, and it's sad to not see that present in the game. Something else too is that the combative NPCs, the bad guys essentially, their AI is like kind of rough. You see them in gunfights, sort of just looking left, looking right very rapidly, and then like when they go to shoot, they aim back on you, and then they look left and right very rapidly. They're calling out bad call outs. You're saying, hey guys, everything's fine. Put your guns away, blah, blah, blah. When you're actively fighting them, it's just really jarring. A lot of grenade spam and things like that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The immersion breaking. Um, Stalker has always felt, at least the original Stalkers, has always felt like a gritty, more intense type of not realistic per se, but more realistic than your average type of survival shooter type game. I don't know what you want to call it. But yeah, this one, it's like they don't climb ladders after you. They'll just wait at like I climbed up a tower and was fighting like 30 guys, and not a single one of them came up after me. They were just waiting at the bottom for me. So yeah, it's not great. As of right now, all these things affect the game a lot. Now they can be fixed down the line, but at launch, I'm going to give it a 4.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like this ever present sort of looming issue that it's really hard to sort of to pretend like is not present. It's always there. And yeah, I mean a 4 is like you said, you give it a 4. I'd give it like a 3. It's just not good. Is sort of the essence of what we're trying to say, and it's enough that, in my opinion, I would say would dissuade somebody from wanting to continue playing it. I mean, I know for myself personally, I've put it down for now because I know that these issues are really hurting the experience that I'm having with the game, especially with the life part of it. And I'm not doing myself justice by playing the game in its current state. I definitely think in time, as Anthony said, it's going to get a hell of a lot better. It's things that can realistically be fixed, but it's just a little too much, at least at the moment. So, like Anthony said, I'm going to give it a 3. It is pretty rough.
Yeah, but like I said, that's not saying it can't get better. This is just holding the game back from being great right now.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now we're going to move on to story. To me, story in Stalker games, it's just a Stalker game. It's not about the overall story. It's not super great writing. There are interesting characters you meet. There are interesting situations you get put into. But it's more about experiencing the zone. Less about, I have to save my daughter or whatever. Like, there's not really much of that in Stalker. They in the beginning, they kind of give you a rough idea of who Skiff, the main character, is, and a little bit of his motivations, but it basically boils down to, I had an artifact and it burned my house down. At least so far was what they've laid out for us. But it does give you some interesting choices to make along the way that are pretty story changing or drive the story path. But I don't know. It's Stalker. You're a blank slate, so you could self-insert an RP.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't really think that there's too much here that it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not, competing with any sort of novel or any other sort of game story out there, right? Like it's nothing super compelling. But I do think that it's a very suitable driving factor to kind of get you into this part of the world, into that part of the world, and so on and so forth, to introduce you to this mechanic, to that mechanic, to get you to want to explore. I think it does that well. So do a lot of the side missions as well in the game that you can get from some of the bartenders. They'll give you little missions to kind of get some money and things like that. And again, it obviously it is to give you money, right? Like the reward is very real. But it's also just kind of pushing you into this direction or into that direction that you otherwise may not have went if it wasn't for like that guiding factor, that guiding hand there behind you. As Anthony was saying too, the choices that you get, they're there to kind of give you the opportunity to express yourself in this manner or in that manner. But it's not like you're going to make a decision and the whole zone, at least thus far from what we've seen, that the whole zone is going to be changed as a consequence of it. It's truly just allowing you to play through this situation that's going to have this specific outcome in the manner that you want, which I think it does well. I mean, it really does give you that opportunity to express yourself. I think a lot of what Skiff has to say, his delivery is just kind of comical at times. Like it feels like, it kind of feels like this is this dude's first time voice acting. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but his delivery is a little comical. And that could be said too about some of the other folks that you meet around the world. Even their accents are a little funny to listen to. I could have swore one of the guys that came across had a very Italian-like accent, and it was kind of
a bobbity boobity. Yeah, it was like stereotypical making fun of an Italian accent. I do want to point out, I think the cutscenes in this game are pretty well done. They definitely give off Metro vibes, but the cutscenes are very I don't know, they're well enough acted. They move the story forward, but it's nothing super special. It's nothing we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're, like I said, they're not necessarily reinventing the wheel here. They're just giving you something to kind of grasp onto, to kind of bring you from A to B. And I think it does that well. And I think that's all it really needs to do. I don't think it needs to do anything crazy here. It just needs to be suitable enough to allow you to play the game without you looking at this and being like, wow, this is a detractor. When in reality, this is just like a mover,
It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to get you from point to point in the game.
I think with that, I'd give it a 7. I would say 7 typically isn't something where you're like, whoa, like this is super great. I don't think this is the kind of story that's you're gonna give a 10 to. I just don't think that's the kind of story that they're trying to tell that, again, is like, crazy or, mind-boggling or blah, blah, blah. As with most video game stories, to be quite honest, usually not that great. So I think a 7 in the context of a Stalker, I think is really solid. I think it's a really good, story for what it is. again, to kind of drive you.
100%. I agree. I'm actually going to give it a 7 as well. I think that a 7 is, like you said, it's not great, but I do think this is the best that you could ask for from a Stalker game in story.
Yeah, exactly.
So now we're going to jump over to just the overall world of Stalker 2. So things like the atmosphere, the art style, the overall vibe of the game. And this is Stalker to me. It's always been about your experience as part of the world and the, you know, Ukrainian zone near Chernobyl. Like it's all like really sick stuff. The art design is unbelievable. Um, some of the mutants they've designed they look so good in Stalker 2 compared to, I mean, obviously compared to a game that came out in 2008 or whatever. But like the poltergeist are unbelievable looking. The bloodsuckers look great. The invisibility on them look great. For all of its problems in the technical aspects and the graphical settings issues, I think they nailed the overall atmosphere of the game. It's creepy. There are certain parts that are like legitimately like scarier than most horror games.
Yeah, I would completely agree, man. It is definitely a terrifying game to play at night when your flashlight is only, illuminating like the next like 5 to 7 to 10 feet or so in front of you. It's like windy outside. There's thunder. There's lightning. You can just hear packs of things kind of inching around the ground, like crawling and stepping and doing all type. It's like a truly spooky game. And it does it so well. There's not many other games I would say that can create that sort of atmosphere around you.
100%. And we got to mention the sound design too. The sound design takes this game from, something cool and interesting to something really immersive. Like all the gun sounds are incredible. The way that, things move around you and everything, like he was saying, like hearing something off in the distance in the dark, it's like actually scary.
Yeah, absolutely. I will admit that the sound does sound really good. And this might have been something to hit on in terms of like the bugs and stuff like that. But the sound a lot of the time too can be really deceiving. Although it is cool hearing them in the distance, it is a little deceiving in that like you'll hear something to your right, but really it's like in front of you. It sounds like it's in front of you, but really it's elsewhere. So the sound design is insane. It does have like little weird issues here and there, but again, it's one of those things that I would imagine would get fixed. But even then, even with it being like a little off, like it still is like, I don't know, it really pushes that vibe of being in this like desolate, dilapidated sort of area where you have like these transformed creatures sort of creeping up around you and attacking you and things like that. Like, I don't know any other game that does what this does. Maybe like that Hellblade Senua's game that also killed it with the vibe, but this is just on a completely different level.
It feels desperate. Like it feels like everything is dangerous. Everything's a threat to you, even if it isn't at a certain point in the game when you kind of get kitted out. Like it's still like, coming across a dog jumping out of you, a mutant dog jumping out of you from the woods at night is still terrifying.
Oh, absolutely, man. I couldn't tell you the amount of times where I'm like panicking as I'm running from one little shelter to the next shelter, whether it's a quest or whatever. Like I'm absolutely like just in this fight or flight mode every single time I'm in the I'm in the forest at night. It kills it. It absolutely kills it. And you'll come across random anomalies and things like that too as you're traveling, and it really helps like set the tone of like you have to be careful with each step that you take. You have to be mindful of where you are in accordance with certain like bases and things like that, because you'll have people posted up there, which I would imagine that when the life is fixed will even further cement the sort of feeling that you get, as you said, that desperate feeling as you're traveling around. It's just nothing does it better. The art style too also really lends itself to the sort of atmosphere that they're trying to create. Feels very fitting. When we did our Veilguard first impressions, the character models in that felt completely out of place with the overall setting of the game. Whereas in something like this, everything feels very much like it belongs. They just kill it. They absolutely nail it. This is one of the few things I would say this game is setting the bar for what other games should strive to be.
100%. I think that this is, to me, this is the story of Stalker. Like the atmosphere, the overall world, your experience moving through it, and how it's letting you know how dangerous, how grimy, how dirty things are. Just finding a group of two people fighting and just siding with one because the other guy started shooting at you and then going on something else. Like, that's atmosphere, that is story, that is world building to me, at least in the Stalker sense. Like, I don't need 6 paragraphs of lore and text and stuff. Just give me a gun, say that's a bad guy, and that's Stalker.
Yeah, absolutely. It does the storytelling with the world incredibly well. I don't know many games that do it as well as Stalker does. And I think as a byproduct of that, of everything that I just said, this to me, I want to give this a 10 so unbelievably bad. I just feel like some of the graphical glitches with the lighting and things like that really pull me out of the moment a lot of the time. The sound design sometimes, although it sounds really good, again, those glitches really bother me. I don't know. I'm like a sucker for getting pulled out of the moment and it kind of killing my vibe. I would say it's a 9 with an asterisk. I think with fixes, it is a 10, and it is a bar that they have set very high. I'm like just so close to it. I just want a little bit more care put into this, and then I'm completely sold.
That's completely fair. That's completely valid. I'll go ahead and give it a 10 though. Even past I didn't have as many lighting glitches as you did, so I think that did affect me. I was more so just frame rate drops. So I kind of looked past that, seeing as like I'm running a 2080. So it is what it is. I'm still going to give it a 10 though.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. So on to our last category, the combat and progression of Stalker 2. To me, this is something that I think Stalker does just so incredibly well. A lot of the time, it feels like you're in a constant battle of attrition versus the world, versus the enemies, versus, and a lot of the times yourself too, right? Like as you're going from A to B, you're trying to be cognizant of the fact that you have enough supplies on you, which eventually the game does kind of give you quite a bit, but at least early on, you're very much aware of how little supplies you may have, how little bullets you may have. And that, in my eyes, helps really cement not only the atmosphere that the game throws you into, but also in the combat, because you have to approach it from a particular point of view, right? You have to be aware of the fact that when you're walking into a couple buildings, that there may be some dogs, that there may be, what do they call it? A bloodsucker, right? Is that what their name is? The invisible guys?
Bloodsucker, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I always want to call them something else. But you got to be aware of those guys. You have to be aware of any sort of potential humans, them being enemies as well, right? And it again, like it's a constant like tug of war between you and them. And I think that the game makes, although that to some people might be kind of like an issue with how difficult it may be with that constant struggle, that to me is where Stalker capitalizes really well. And not only does it do that well, but it makes it incredibly gratifying. Like you feel really good about yourself when you go do a mission, you come back, you get your reward, and you're like, damn, like I fucking earned like every last bullet I got, every last gun that I sold, every last coupon that I made, whatever the case is, it makes that gratifying. And it's not something that I think a lot of games do super well a lot of the time, but this game I think leans into that really well, and I think it kills it on making it difficult, but making you feel good about it, feeling like you earned it.
100%. I think there's something about. I had an experience maybe 6 hours in or so where I was completely out of ammo. I had to fight my way out of a base, and it was like it took me quite a few tries, but it was so rewarding when I finally like popped enough energy drinks to like slip out and sprint past the guards, because I couldn't like. You can only hit so many headshots when there's 30 dudes shooting at you, and it's a desperate game. Like it goes back towards like the atmosphere that we were talking about. Like everything is dangerous. Everything can kill you, and you're always on edge.
And I think kind of the next piece of that, right, is that you have the combat, but then you have progression in a game, and how that progression kind of helps facilitate that combat. And in this case, there isn't any sort of experience, there isn't any sort of skill points. Really, what the progression in this game is your gear. It's how deep your wallet is, and being able to outfit yourself with the best gear that you can see from a vendor. Upgrading the gear that maybe you find on the last little quest that you did, or this random house that you came across. You can use the coupons that you have to improve your gear, to improve your guns, being able to kind of lean into the ones that you really like, move away from the ones that you don't. But not only that, but I think that this type of progression where you can come across a lot of really interesting guns, you can come across a lot of interesting pieces of armors, but a little bit less for that, but more so for the guns. is that it allows you to use a wide breadth of guns, right? It doesn't necessarily let you you don't fall into the manner of like, okay, this is the one gun that I'm going to use indefinitely. Because a lot of the time you just don't have enough bullets to kind of do that.
I was just going to say the ammo scarcity forces you to improvise.
It's the ammo scarcity. It's the condition of your gun. It really gives you the opportunity to try out a plethora of different options. As you're going in and you're fighting enemies, you're killing them with like a pistol, potentially, maybe an SMG you picked up before. Your SMG will eventually start to break. And when it does, you might pivot to one that's working. You might pivot to a shotgun. You might pivot to one of the ARs that they have. Whatever the case is, you're pivoting from A to B to C. And in there's that necessarily isn't progression in of itself, but it gives you that opportunity to find out which ones you like the most. So when you get the opportunity with the money that you've now accumulated to upgrade your gear, you can do that to the guns that you're really enjoying. But even then, just like Anthony said, the scarcity of that ammo lends itself to making you have to try different things out. And I love that about the game. I think that's awesome, man. I don't know many other games that put you in that situation, but it does it well.
It's great game design. I would compare it, if we're gonna go off like game design choices, the same way that like Breath of the Wild did like weapon damage, like forcing you to keep changing your weapon, not go with the same build. There's no stats in Stalker. There's no, there's, resistance stats for your armor and, deterioration on your guns and shit like that. But there's no endurance, strength, intelligence. Like, it's not that type of RPG, but it still feels like an RPG with the way they made progression, like, towards your gear.
Yeah, and it's so good, man. I'm a big fan of it. I definitely think that I don't know how many other developers out there could have pulled this off as well as GCS did, but they killed it. I think it's great. I know there's one other thing, like just there are some issues with the combat and things like that. So I'm going to let you jump into that because I know it's some things that you've come across and things that I have as well.
Yeah, so there are some issues. I don't love fighting mutants, and that could just be a me thing. I'm not good at video games. I've never claimed to be good at video games. I don't aim well in first-person games. I prefer my combat to be turn-based if I'm going to choose. But this game is good enough to even get somebody that doesn't like first-person shooters like really into it. I don't, like I said though, I don't love fighting mutants. They're a little bullet spongy. When I have a 2-shot sawed-off shotgun and shoot a mutant twice in the face, I feel like it should go down. But again, that's more so just me. That's my personal preference. I'm still going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think overall, the combat just makes the game better, and the progression system makes the game better. It builds upon the World of Stalker 2 aspects, the atmosphere and the vibe of the game. Is everything's desperate, everything's grimy. You pick up a weapon, it's half broken, it jams a bunch. Like, there are just certain aspects that make you feel, you're always scared, you're always on the back foot, and that's kind of what Stalker is to me, and they nailed it in this.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I like the idea of it's sort of like layers, like it's building on top of itself, right? Like you have the world of Stalker, this really, again, like this, like desperate, just broken down, destroyed world that you're in, and then you have the different characters and things like that in it to kind of help you move along, the different storylines, the different little side quests and things like that, the choices you make in that to kind of help you move from A to B to C. And then you have the combat to help facilitate that travel as you go from A to B to C, and then eventually on your way back. The progression system that allows you to, or that accentuates all of that as well, right? Being able to try out the different guns, like you mentioned, being able to upgrade them and things like that. It's just layers on top of layers on top of layers. And this is a phenomenal layer, the combat and progression aspects of this game. The pathing sometimes on the enemies that you're fighting can be a little rough. I think fighting dogs is just frustrating. I'm confident that's probably the point. But man, they're a pain in the ass, to be honest.
Yeah, it's the same as like a FromSoft dog. Like they're
exactly,
so
man,
jumpy and jittery and hard to hit that you will get ganked by a group of dogs just because you can't keep up with all the different directions they're going from.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example because it is they're just a fucking pain in the ass, dude. I hate them. But I think as a consequence of everything that we've said, I'm gonna go and agree with Anthony and say it's an 8. I definitely think that the game could do with a little bit more improving. I got to be honest. I hate the bleeding mechanic in the game. I didn't like it in Clear Sky, in Chernobyl. I don't like it in this. I haven't played Call of Pripyat, so I can't say. I'm assuming it's the same, and I probably wouldn't like it. Haven't played it though. The pathing is rough. The sponginess too, like Anthony said, is annoying. I think there's little critiques that they could do to make this a little bit more enjoyable for our personal tastes. Maybe that sponginess goes away when you up the difficulty to the highest, but at least on the normal one, these are some of the issues that we have. But 8, very, very strong. I think regardless, an 8 is very, very strong.
Yeah, I do want to mention comparing these combat mechanics to the vanilla Stalker games, like the old ones. It's night and day. They crushed it. They modernized it. It feels so much better. Vanilla Stalker, while being a great game, mechanically it's rough. It's a very rough game mechanically, and they made this one feel so good to play. And I have to give them their flowers for that.
Absolutely, yeah. It definitely feels like a product of its time, for sure. And this is a great iteration on that. So 8s from both of us. Phenomenal. And so this leads us to our final thoughts on Stalker 2 Heart of Chornobly. And both of our scores are going to have an asterisk sort of attached to them for a variety of reasons. The first and most obvious of which is going to be the invasion of Ukraine from Russia just a couple years ago. This isn't something where I'm going to get deeply political and get super in-depth about, but as you can imagine, if your country goes to war, there's a good chance that anything you're actively and currently doing is probably going to be affected as a byproduct of that. And that's something that I would imagine some of the performance issues that we're seeing, some of the glitches, the bugs, things like that, the, just not necessarily having that extra layer of polish on that is a consequence of this invasion. I think it's probably pretty easy for us to admit that. Again, not to get super hyper political about it, but that's definitely where I would imagine some of these greater issues are coming from. And it's not something I want to hold against them. I mean, obviously not. Like, it's not their fault.
That's the thing. They have bigger issues going on currently in their world. So it's not a. Stalker 2, as important it is to a lot of people, there's more important things than that.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. And then that sort of leads us into what happened way back in 2011 and kind of where things came from.
Yeah, so Stalker 2 was initially announced in 2010. This game came out 14 years after it was initially announced. Even though it's same in name, it's a different studio. So this studio initially closed down in 2011. GSC is no longer the original company that it was. It is in name only, and I believe there's a few people from the original dev team, but it's mostly different at this point. It's been 14 years. The game's probably gone through 3 or 4 iterations, pure development hell. And for them to put out a game as good as this is, even if it is unpolished, while going through that type of a dev cycle is nothing short of outstanding.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I think that as much as we had some negative things to say about this game, I still think, like you said, invasion in mind, dissolution, and then, recreation of that studio in mind, for them to put this product out in the quality that it is, my expectations were in the dirt. I really thought the very least about this game, and I was not excited for it at all, but they've absolutely knocked it out of the park with this. I think they have created a phenomenal base to build something beautiful on top of, and I think they will. I'm more than confident in them. I mean, they've announced that they have a couple DLCs coming, potentially more in the future, and I think as a consequence of that, you're going to see some really good post-sale support come from GSC when it comes to the sort of the longevity of this game.
And let's not forget the vanilla. We've just been playing them to do a retrospective on the entire Stalker series. The vanilla Stalkers of old kind of are bad. Like
they're a little rough.
They are good games. They are a product of their time, but they're not polished either. Mechanically, they're kind of off. They're not always fun to play, and I think this is a modern version of that's done all of those things better, which is huge, especially with the dev cycle, especially with the war. Like, all of these things need to be taken into account because it's real life. It's like actually happening, and people are being affected. So it's not just like, I don't know. I feel like they had the heart of Stalker, the heart of Chernobyl, if you will. He said the thing. But like, I feel like they did such a good job of making it feel like Stalker, even though like half these people didn't even work on the original Stalker games. Yeah,
it's phenomenal. It's really awesome to see. So that in conjunction with the bugs is with the bugs eventually being fixed.
Okay, Gollum.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of too. But with the bugsies getting fixed in the eventual future, I'm confident that this game, the scores that we're gonna talk about here in a moment, are gonna get a hell of a lot higher. That in conjunction too with the Alive 2.0 not being present in the game currently, that is something that I'm more than confident is just a matter of time. But it is important to talk about. I do think that that was something that they advertised and then later secretly sort of stopped talking about. And then eventually, I think they pulled the information off their Steam page too, eventually, which, you know, I can cut them a bit of slack for that. Typically with the dev, I'd be pretty hard on them. But again, given everything that we mentioned, I think they deserve the slack on that. So with all that to say,
I do have to mention before we get into the final scores,
sure.
the modding scene for Stalker has always been stellar. Gamma, Anomaly, huge mods that change the game, that make them so much better, and they released a lot. They're giving a lot of mod support for this game. So in this is a 5-10 year game. Like, modders will take this game and make it something completely next level. I'm confident. So keep that in mind too. Like I said earlier, vanilla Stalker isn't that good. People have great memories of Anomaly, of Gamma, because it mechanically fixed so much of what vanilla Stalker didn't do right. And this is a much more solid base for modders to work off of. I think they're going to have an easier time making it even better.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I definitely think that this is a good base. There's a lot to be built on. And honestly, I have the confidence that they'll do it. I am more than confident they'll make it happen. I think with all that said, I would very confidently give this game, and again, scores with an asterisk, a 7 in its current state. But I do think that this is something where you let it cook for just a little while, give it a few months so they can iron out some bug fixes, some patches, blah, blah, blah. And it'll be something great. And then again, like Anthony said, 5 to 10 years time, we'll have just a plethora of mods to sit back and to kind of revisit this world with.
100%. I'm right in the same boat. 7.5 with an asterisk. I think that exactly like you said, 2-3 months. This game is, if they work out the bugs, if they iron out some of the issues, it's going to be an 8-9 easily.
Yeah,
easily.
Exactly.
Just as of release in its current state, 7.5.
For sure. And I definitely do think it's something that I would be a little cautious to purchase for full price. I don't expect that this will go on sale anytime soon, but if it does, I would say with a sale, you could probably buy it with confidence. But full price, it's hard to recommend, again, because at least from my point of view, I feel like a lot of those bugs and glitches and things like that really pull me out of the moment. And a game like this, immersion is it's important. It's like the most important aspect of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is immersion breaking. But one thing that we did want to talk about.
It is available on Game Pass.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So that's the thing. If you have Game Pass, fucking go for it. Play it right now. Get an idea. I think as of right now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm probably about 8 to 10 hours in, and I'm enjoying my time with it, but I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to take a step away from it, go back to playing Metaphor Refantasio, the best game ever made, and spending time with my wife, Hulkenberg.
Oh, beautiful, man. What a lovely way to spend an evening, I'm sure. But yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely something where you let them cook, and then once they finish cooking in a few months, this will be an amazing game. Game Pass, definitely check it out. Full price, I would wait. But yeah, 7.5 overall. It's a great game, great studio. I'm very excited to see where things go from here. It's an awesome thing to see. But with
I think we were both pleasantly surprised. Like, we were very pleasantly surprised with how much we enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was one of the big things that we were hitting each other up about, was just like, hey, like, this is good. There is something here. There's something special, and I think they're capable of pulling it off. But again, time will tell.
And if you want us to revisit it in 2-3 months and for a full review, I would be definitely down for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when some of the things are fixed and things like that, we'll pick it back up and then reassess. But thank you guys very much, and I love you guys. Anthony, I hope you love them too.
I love you. I do.